Have you ever been so deep in the woods that the silence starts to feel wrong? Not peaceful, not calm, but heavy, like something is listening back to you. I've been a freelance land surveyor for over 15 years, and most of my work takes me far away from people, into places where there are no roads, no signals, and no help if something goes wrong. I used to enjoy that isolation. It made me feel free, like I was the only person alive for miles. But after what happened 4 years ago, I realized something that still bothers me to this day. Just because you can't see anyone doesn't mean you're alone. That job took me to a remote mountain area near Clearwater, Idaho. It was one of those assignments where you have to hike miles just to reach the site. I remember it took me nearly 6 miles to get to my camp, carrying all my gear through thick snow and rough terrain. Like always, I reported my route to the ranger station, set up my tent before sunset, and prepared for a normal week of work. The first day went smoothly. I found a few markers, logged everything, and made it back before dark. The weather was cold but manageable, nothing unusual for that time of year. But the next day, things started to change. The snowfall became heavier than expected, covering everything in a thick white layer. It made the ground unpredictable, dangerous. I knew I should have stayed back, waited for better conditions, but I didn't. The next marker I needed to check was only about a mile away, and I convinced myself it would be quick. Looking back now, that was the moment everything went wrong. The terrain was worse than it looked. Snow was hiding ice, rocks, and uneven ground beneath it. Every step felt uncertain. I was slowly making my way down a small slope when suddenly my foot slipped. I didn't even see the ice. 1 second I was standing, the next I was sliding down fast, completely out of control. I managed to grab onto a tree root and stop myself, but the damage was done. The pain in my ankle hit instantly, sharp, intense, enough to make me freeze in place. When I tried to stand, I could barely put weight on it. I knew I couldn't continue. No job was worth risking my life out there. So I turned back, slowly making my way toward camp. Every step hurt, and I had to be careful not to fall again. That's when I noticed something that didn't belong. Footprints. Fresh ones, clear and sharp in the snow. Someone had walked that trail recently, maybe minutes before me. It wasn't impossible, but it was strange. This area was extremely remote. You don't just run into people out there.
At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was probably a hunter or another worker. But as I kept walking, I started hearing something behind me. At first it was faint, easy to dismiss, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. Footsteps, slow, steady, matching my pace. I stopped walking, and after a second or two, the sound stopped too. That's when the feeling hit me, that quiet, creeping fear that something isn't right. I tried to stay calm and kept moving, but the footsteps came back again, always a few seconds behind me. Never close enough to see, but never far enough to ignore. Then I heard something else, a strange metallic sound coming from the trees to my left. It didn't belong there. It sounded like metal lightly hitting something in a place where there should only be trees and snow. That's when I looked down again and realized something worse. The footprints ahead of me were gone. I turned, trying to figure out where they went, and that's when I saw it. Another set of footprints, moving through the trees beside me. Not behind me, beside me. Whoever had been ahead of me was now walking parallel to me, hidden just out of sight, keeping pace with me, watching me. That's when fear really took over, because I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't run. I made it back to my camp just as darkness settled in, but the moment I stepped inside my tent, I realized how exposed I really was. A thin layer of fabric between me and whatever was out there. I started packing immediately, ignoring the pain in my ankle. Then I heard it. Footsteps right outside my tent, slow, controlled,
circling me, not rushing, not attacking, just walking around me, like it was waiting.
After what felt like forever, the footsteps stopped. No sound of them leaving, just silence. I knew I couldn't stay there. I took a deep breath, unzipped the tent, and stepped outside. And that's when I saw him. A man standing at the edge of the trees, staring directly at me. He looked old, weak, almost lifeless. There was something deeply wrong about him. We stood there in silence before he finally spoke. "You're a lucky man." Then he turned and disappeared into the woods. And to this day, I still don't know what he meant. What would you do if you were lost in a blizzard? Your partner was dying behind you, and the only shelter you could find didn't feel like it was meant to save you. I've spent most of my life in Alaska. I know the wilderness better than most people. I've guided trips, survived harsh winters, and handled situations that would scare most people. I always believed I understood the land, that I could trust my instincts out there. But 3 years ago, something happened that made me question everything I thought I knew about the wilderness and about what might be hiding in it.
At the time, I was with my boyfriend, Randy. He was just as experienced as I was, maybe even more when it came to winter travel. We had been together for years, and most of our relationship was built around extreme outdoor trips. Long hunts, remote camping, the kind of trips where you have to respect the environment or it will kill you. We had planned a snowmobile trip between 2 cabins about 60 miles apart. It wasn't new to us. We had done it before without any problems. The weather forecast was clear. Everything felt routine.
The first day went exactly as expected. We reached the second cabin by late afternoon, settled in, and spent the night like we always did, eating, talking, playing cards. It felt normal, safe, like just another trip we would laugh about later. But the next morning, everything changed the moment I opened my eyes.
A full blizzard had hit overnight. The wind was howling, and the snow was so thick you could barely see anything outside. It didn't make sense. There had been no warning, no sign this was coming. We had enough supplies to wait it out, to stay another day, but we didn't. We made the decision to leave anyway, and that decision almost cost us everything. We got on our snowmobiles, with Randy leading and me following behind him. Visibility was terrible, so I focused on staying in his tracks. Then, without any warning, it happened. 1 second he was moving forward, and the next his snowmobile flipped completely. I rushed to him, but the moment I saw his leg, I knew it was bad. It was bent in a way it shouldn't be. The kind of injury you don't just walk away from. I tried to get him onto my snowmobile. I really did, but it didn't work. He was too heavy, and every time I tried to move, he would slip off, crying out in pain. After the second attempt, he told me to stop. The way he said it, I knew he had already accepted the situation. That's when we both understood what had to happen. I had to leave him there and go get help. I gave him everything I could. Extra layers, supplies, anything to keep him alive. My hands were shaking as I tried to use the satellite phone, hoping the signal would go through. I wasn't even sure it worked, but we didn't have time to wait. I marked the location on my GPS, looked at him one last time, and then I left, riding alone into a storm that didn't feel natural anymore. After a while, something started to feel wrong. The terrain didn't look familiar. The direction didn't feel right. It was like the land itself had changed. I kept going, trying to trust my instincts, until I saw something through the trees. Smoke. A thin trail of smoke rising into the storm. That meant one thing. Someone was there. And right then, that was all I needed. The cabin was small, strange-looking, partially buried in snow, but there was light inside, and the door was unlocked. When I stepped in, it was warm. Too warm. There was a fire burning, a bedroll on the floor, and food sitting out like someone had just been there. But no one answered when I called out. Then I found the map, the notebook, the markings. People had been tracked, watched, documented, and before I could even process that, I heard it. A scream from under the floor, loud, desperate, not words, just pure terror. I ran. I didn't stop to think. I didn't look back. I just ran. Somehow I made it to the real cabin and called for help. They rescued Randy, barely alive. But when I told them about the cabin, they said they couldn't find anything. No cabin, no smoke, nothing. And that's the part that still stays with me, because either I imagined the whole thing, or someone was really there, screaming for help, and I left them behind. Or maybe it was never a place meant to help anyone at all. Maybe it was something else entirely. And if I had stayed just a little longer, I might have never made it out. Have you ever seen something in the woods that made you stop instantly? Not because it scared you right away, but because it didn't make sense. Something so out of place, your brain struggles to explain it, but your instincts are already telling you to leave. Because sometimes the real danger isn't what you hear, it's what you don't understand. And once you step closer, it might already be too late to turn back. This happened during a solo hiking trip in the backcountry of Montana. I had chosen that area because it was quiet, remote, the kind of place where you don't run into people for days. That's what I wanted. No noise, no distractions, just me and the woods. I had everything planned, my route, my camp spots, my supplies. It was supposed to be a peaceful trip, just a few days away from everything. But I didn't know. Someone else had already chosen that place too. It was late afternoon when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just sunlight hitting something, but it wasn't. It flickered, a steady, unnatural flicker. Fire, deep in the woods, far away from any trail or campsite. That alone was strange. Fires like that don't just appear out there, not in places where no one is supposed to be. I stopped walking, just staring at it, trying to figure out what I was looking at and why it felt so wrong. I should have turned around. I know that now. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, especially in places where you think you're in control. I told myself it was probably another camper, maybe someone off trail. So I stepped closer, slowly, carefully, trying not to make too much noise. But the closer I got, the quieter everything became. No birds, no wind, nothing, just the soft crackling of that fire. When I finally got close enough to see clearly, my stomach dropped. There was no one there, just a fire, burning in a small clearing. No tent, no gear, no footprints leading in or out, nothing. It didn't make sense. Fires don't just burn on their own out there. Someone had to be there, but they weren't. And that's when I realized something worse. The fire wasn't for warmth, it wasn't for cooking. It was placed like it was meant to be seen. That's when I heard it. A branch snapping behind me, not far, close enough to know I wasn't alone anymore. I turned quickly, scanning the trees, but I couldn't see anything, just darkness between trunks. But I could feel it, that presence, that heavy feeling of being watched. And then I noticed something that made my chest tighten. There were markings on the trees, cuts, symbols, not random. They formed a pattern leading toward the fire. I stepped back slowly, trying to stay calm, trying not to panic, but every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run. That's when I heard movement again, this time to my right, then behind me, then to my left. It wasn't just one person, there were multiple, moving between the trees, keeping distance, surrounding me without ever stepping into the open. They didn't rush me, they didn't speak, they just moved.
I didn't wait anymore. I turned and ran, branches hitting my face, feet slipping on uneven ground. I didn't care. I just needed distance. But no matter how fast I moved, I could still hear them, not chasing me directly, just keeping up, matching my direction, like they already knew where I was going before I did, like I wasn't escaping, just being guided somewhere.
After what felt like forever, I finally saw my campsite. Relief hit me for half a second until I realized something was wrong. My tent was open. My bag had been moved, and sitting right in the center of my campsite was another small fire, still burning, still fresh, exactly like the one I had just left. That's when it hit me. That first fire wasn't random. It was bait, and I had walked straight into it. I didn't stay another second. I grabbed what I could and left everything else behind. I hiked through the night without stopping, without looking back, and I never went back to that area again. But the part that still stays with me isn't just what happened, it's what I realized later. Those people, or whatever they were, didn't try to stop me. They didn't attack, they didn't chase me down, because they didn't need to. They already knew something I didn't at the time. That fear, real fear, doesn't need to catch you. It just needs to make sure you never come back.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe my channel. See you on next videos. Till then, goodbye.